This report is based on a news story that was actually covered by the media.
Across investigative agencies around the world, there is one position that receives consistent attention whenever an incident is reported: the individual known as the first finder, or the first person to discover the scene. This term refers to the person who first notices an abnormal situation, confirms that something is wrong, and alerts the authorities or surrounding individuals. Whether in Japan, the United States, Europe, or Asia, cultures may differ, but this investigative principle remains constant. The first finder is always interviewed. This does not imply that the first finder is likely to be the perpetrator. A wide review of global case studies and investigative records shows no reliable statistic that states a large percentage of first finders are offenders. Incidents vary dramatically depending on their setting, relationship structures, and social context. No meaningful global percentage can be declared. However, investigative agencies treat first finders with attention for a simple reason. They are the earliest confirmed point of contact with the scene. The proximity to the event, in timing and position, makes the first finder a valuable source of information. This is why agencies worldwide make them a focal point in early inquiries. Investigators commonly ask a consistent set of questions to the first finder. These include the circumstances under which the scene was discovered, the activities immediately preceding the discovery, and the sequence of actions taken after realizing that something was wrong. These questions are standard whether in Japan, the United States, or Europe. The purpose is not to cast suspicion, but to confirm the time sequence, ensure that the explanation is coherent, and identify any potential inaccuracies. If inconsistencies are present, they do not indicate guilt, but simply signal that further verification is required. Judicial documents from various Western countries note that first finders sometimes overlap with offenders in cases where they share a close living environment with the victim. This occurs in situations such as domestic living arrangements, close personal relationships, or shared households. In these scenarios, the circle of individuals who naturally encounter the scene early is limited. As a result, first finders and possible suspects fall within the same small group. This overlap arises from proximity, not from an elevated probability of guilt. It reflects social reality rather than investigative bias. Japan tends to emphasize the detailed reconstruction of the timeline when interviewing first finders. Investigators carefully trace minute-by-minute movements to assemble an accurate chronological record. By contrast, in the United States, investigators may pay close attention to the emotional presentation of the first finder. A person who appears unusually calm, repeats unnecessary explanations, or displays a pattern of exaggerated agitation may be asked additional questions. These reactions are not direct indicators of wrongdoing, but investigators sometimes treat them as signs that further clarification is required. European investigative practices generally regard the first finder as the initial provider of information and evaluate that person as equally likely to be a witness, an unrelated passerby, or a potential suspect. Investigators are focused heavily on the internal consistency of the testimony. Crime researchers identify one reason first finders attract investigative interest. The first person at a scene often possesses information, accurate or distorted, about the circumstances of the event. This information can assist in reconstructing the scene, regardless of the first finder's relationship to the case. The investigative process is designed to gather data, not to assign blame prematurely. Therefore, beginning with the earliest reliable observer is considered an essential step worldwide. The relationship between the first finder and the eventual determination of responsibility differs depending on the type of incident. In domestic environments, the first finder is often a person who shares daily life with the victim. In outdoor or public settings, however, the first finder may be a passerby with no personal connection. Urban density, cultural habits, and local lifestyle patterns all influence who notices an incident first. This diversity of context makes it impossible to create a universal correlation between being a first finder and being involved in the event. Nevertheless, a consistent conclusion emerges from surveys and reports from different countries. The first finder often holds information that helps clarify the broader situation. This does not imply involvement in wrongdoing. It simply recognizes that the earliest observer of a scene can describe details that others cannot. Investigators therefore approach first finders not from a standpoint of suspicion, but as a necessary step toward understanding the structure of the event. The widely held impression, fueled by films, dramas, and fictional narratives, that first finders frequently turn out to be the offenders is considered a dramatized exaggeration. Real investigative processes do not rely on such assumptions. Instead, investigators evaluate evidence, compare testimonies, and confirm the physical consistency of the first finder's explanation. After examining data from different regions, the conclusion is neither sensational nor dramatic. Sometimes the first finder is involved. Sometimes they are not. The outcome depends entirely on individual cases, not on any statistical predisposition. Thus, the reason first finders draw investigative attention is not due to suspicion, but due to their position at the entrance of the information flow. The first person to encounter an unusual situation, whether a passerby, a neighbor, a family member, or someone with no connection, serves as the earliest point from which the incident can be understood. This investigative principle remains constant in Japan, the United States, and Europe. There is an interesting universality to the role of the first finder, regardless of cultural or national differences. This individual stands closest to the key information of an event, whether they turn out to be unrelated, indirectly connected, or in rare cases involved. The first finder remains crucial as the first identifiable link in the chain of understanding. Across international records, this fundamental principle is what consistently reappears.
Many things are happening around the world every day, and unexpected events may occur in our own lives as well. We hope to see you again in our next story.